We always put our love for God above everything, even allegiance to our country. But that's not what they're really talking about. Listen carefully. They say they are opposed to people who say America was founded as a Christian nation, Americans who believe not only in the spiritual heritage of our nation, but believe that we ought to use elections to help return our country to its Christian foundation. If that's Christian nationalism, count me in, because that's what we have to do. And
that's what we have to do. Pastor Robert Jefferson, who appeared a lot of times on Fox News, not sure if he's still there anymore, if he got booted off and now he's on these types of things, or if he's just spreading his hate everywhere. But as you heard, Pastor Jefferson, count me in to Christian nationalism. Before, he wasn't always saying that because it wasn't allowed as much, or at least it wasn't accepted in public circles, but now it is. And as a matter of fact, he also wants to impose their beliefs on other folks, on the rest of the country, because again, that's what we're supposed to do. Let's let him keep talking.
What's so hypocritical about this, Tim, is the left don't mind at all imposing their values on our country through the election process. They don't mind forcing their pro-abortion, pro-transgender, pro-open borders policy upon our nation, but they object when conservative Christians try to impose their values on society at large.
You hear the difference there? It's so hypocritical that these leftists want to have an election and impose their values on the country, or maybe have the people that are voting in those elections decide, and maybe those elected leaders listen to those values that the majority of Americans want. But it's the minority group of people that they're talking about, being the folks that believe in all the nonsense and madness that people like Jefferson believe, because it's a Christian nation. So this is from July of this year. Before this, as I pointed out, Jefferson wasn't big on pointing out that he's a Christian nationalist, but now it's okay to do so. Here's a flashback from July. This is what he said. I often get accused of being a Christian nationalist. This is the same guy who we just heard talking in July. I'm having reporters ask me all the time, this is a new phrase, Christian nationalism. Are you a Christian nationalist? Do you believe America is exceptional to any other nation, and God and it's God's preferred nation? What a stupid thing to think. Anyways, and I answered with a resounding no, not in any sense. If you know anything about the God of the Bible, you know God is no respecter of people or nations. He said this in July. Also in a 40-minute sermon that was a part history lesson and part review of a litany of US court rulings, Jefferson traced his version of America's origins and claimed the clear intent of the founders was to prefer Christianity over all other nations. Hey, Pastor, I think that's why they think you're a Christian nationalist, because you say things like that. More. In fact, he said the very phrase wall of separation between church and state was intended only to prevent government from favoring one Christian religion over another, not to give equal footing to all religions. So now after all this, it's turned to Christian nationalism, as he just said, sign me up. So he sounds like a political figure talking about all this, but he's also posing as a pastor who I assume still gets his tax-free exemption on his taxes because he's spreading the word. This is why politicians have blurred this whole line between them talking about Christianity and their belief systems and connecting it to their policies, which they have none of, and then also pastors like him talking like politicians, but then holding that mantle of, I'm just a speaker of God. And if you guys don't follow me, you're not following God, you're bad Christians, therefore you should be Republicans, therefore you should vote for hateful people who are pushing people to go and commit violence. Doesn't it all make sense? Let's listen to some of those Republicans and see how this whole thing ties together. This is why they're working this way. Watch.
You can call us extremists. You can call us domestic terrorists. You know who else was called a lot of names his whole life? Jesus.
I'm a Christian and I say it proudly. We should be Christian nationalists.
The church is supposed to direct the government. The government is not supposed to direct the church.
So much for this myth of separation of church and state.
When you look at our platform, it's the only platform out there that recognizes the Creator, that recognizes that we have rights that supersede government.
We need people all over the country to be willing to put on that full armor of God, to stand firm against the left schemes. You'll be met with flaming arrows, but the shield of faith will stop them.
They're children, Jessica. It's like they're living out their fantasies of being in a biblical story. You got the fiery arrows coming for you. Put the shield and the armor on. What for, bro? You're going to work down at Starbucks. Chill out. Chill out. You're getting in your Honda Civic and going down the street. You have no armor and there's no flaming arrows flying at you. But this is the scene that they want to portray to their people, so they think they're in this war, so that maybe they can start fighting.
Yeah. Let's think for a moment about why we have government at all. What is government for? Think about a community. We can't all afford to just build a school ourselves and hire teachers to teach our kids. So we pool our resources together, and we need some entity to organize those resources so that we have schools, so that we have roads built, so that we have post offices to deliver things like mail. Public goods are the main reason we have government, so that we have some system of organizing our society. And these people have been convinced that all their government exists to do is to tell them fairy tales about the boogeyman of what's going on in society. And if they can tell a compelling enough story, they can earn your votes without them doing anything to deliver public goods for you. It's absolutely insane. They're trying to distract you. And listen, they're trying to go back to how the founding fathers intended our country to run, right? There's a little bit of saying the quiet part out loud there by saying, they didn't really want freedom of religion, even though our country was essentially founded on freedom of religion and people escaping religious persecution. They're like, well, just Christian religions, and also just men, and also just white men. It's like, I grew up thinking we had moved past that, and very clearly we have not.
It was just suppressed a little bit, make sure people weren't holding them to task on that belief system. But also, since we're praising founding fathers and all they intended, and they think they intended for us to be this nation that suppresses every other religion to the point of violence, they also believed in holding human beings as slaves and making sure that they work for them. In fact, building out the entire infrastructure and economy of this country. Yeah, sure, that's all. It's a great beginnings to this country. That's why we like to ignore that part, because it doesn't match up to their whole narrative that no matter what they believe the founding fathers meant by the freedom of religion or the separation of church and state and all that they've disputed against, even if they believed it, this whole thing with this Constitution in this country is that we can amend it, that we can get better, that we acknowledge that there's humans that they didn't believe were humans before because it's 2022. Well, let's just stay back to where they were in some aspects, not all of them.